Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Ruthless People. So it is kind of weird to see a kidnapping film done in a comedic genre. But then again, there is to also be the Dan Aykroyd Celtic Pride movie, which surprisingly, I don't know where that came from. How did I remember that whatsoever? But stuff bizarrely just kind of comes up. But yeah, because there's just a lot more serious kidnapping films. Like, of course, you have like Alpha Dog or Alpha. That is to be the Justin Timberlake film where they prank kidnap somebody and then they find out that like everybody's believing that this kid is actually to be kidnapped, and then like, oh crap, like what are we gonna do now? And then all of a sudden, when push comes to shove, uh, people end up realizing that spending a long time in jail is to be on the line. So things start to happen within that tale. Uh, but then also you get the obvious go-to kidnapping movie called Ransom with Mel Gibson, where it's like, "Give me back my son," and he turns around and he is to hold up the ransom to just be like, "Well, hey, I'm not going to give you guys a dime. Instead, I'm going to make this a bounty on your head." And so, like, hey, everybody, figure out who these people are so you can give me back my son. But so, anyways, those are probably the most iconic ones. But I think through the mystery or crime playlist that I believe I still have upon this channel, you could probably see a number of probably other kidnapping films. But then also there might just be some stuff that is to have some kind of kidnapping thing with it, like Christmas Vacation. At some point, it has like a kidnapping element in that film. But anyways, let's go on and let's get back into this movie, Ruthless People. So we have a lot of coincidence and just kind of interwoven like stories that all connect at some point. But so we would have Sam Stone, who is to be in desperation of getting rid of his seemingly lover Barbara, which he doesn't really love whatsoever. Instead, he is to have another lover on the side, some side dish. And Sam is to hope that he is to muster the ability of killing Barbara himself. But all of a sudden, one day, he is to pick up the phone and have somebody kidnap her for him. So he is to seemingly be in the clear, thinking that, okay, I can just completely ignore these kidnappers, and they will go on and do the deed of which that I had rationally been pining away thinking of. So we would have Sam, who is consistently getting these phone calls from these kidnappers to the point of him wanting to go on and be like, man, do I have to give you the gun in hand yourself and pull the trigger to get you to just have the cojones of the set, the brass balls to frickin' pull the trigger? Pull the trigger. If you had gone on to see the Chris Evans Scott Pilgrim versus the World movie, you would probably get that reference. But that's a just oddball reference. But also, I'm gonna throw in another movie that has Danny DeVito in it called "Throw Mama from the Train." Billy Crystal, very good film. Some pretty good comedy. There is some kind of very kind of clumsy comedy, like the Man in the Hat story and whatever. But eventually, there also is some pretty good jokes in there with the mother. If you've never seen that movie, so good. But so, anyways, Ruthless People. So, for the most point, Sam is to hoping that he can drive these kidnappers into the success of Barbara's death. But then to come to find out, Sam is to need Barbara alive so he can verify that she is alive so he can get out of the troubles that he is to be in within the later part of this film. And so the kidnappers eventually realize that they have an upper hand and they are to go on and ask for a much more substantial amount of money if to have had earlier parts in the film where they are to go down in ransom price. So there also is a funny bit of thing that is to be played around with within this film to have a late night humping be confused with a murdering, and we have that massive mistake done by a couple that is too dumb to look into a video that is to actually be uh, coincidentally connected to the commissioner or person that they are going and consistently having connection with within this film of a police law authority. So there is just a lot of funny comedy to just be had in this film. It's very entertaining. Um, I feel this is to probably maybe be in great territory, if not even better than that to some people. But yeah, um, I enjoyed this film. It was good. Uh, Surprisingly good. I had seen it, of course, such a long time ago, and really wanted to just kind of check it out. But coincidentally, I wanted to go on and check out this show called Wreck, which is to seemingly have a villainous character that had this duck like mask on. And while going through the Google searching, I ended up stumbling upon this movie. And coincidentally, at the same time, uh, while I was talking to my mother, she had mentioned this film. So it was all just like planets aligned, was like, okay, like there's something telling me that I need to watch this movie. And hopefully that ends up being today. Like I get it, yeah. Like eventually getting to like, how did I just stumble upon this film is to be no interest to people, but hey, like it's always just weird these like serendipitous things that eventually, if this does well, then like wow, like what a bizarre thing that all of this just tied together to force me to check this thing out. But so this movie is great. Where can you decide to state to see this movie upon yourself and have your own opinion about it if you hadn't already seen this yourself? Well, this is to be available on Amazon's and a bunch of things for 370 something, but legitimately I will go on and give you an alternate route to be able to see this movie for absolutely free through a number of apps that you can dare in fact watch this movie on. So, with that said, firstly, I will go on and state most of these apps I've been consistently using for either thumbnail reasons or legitimately to watch a number of these movies for free because otherwise I would have to justify going in to look into very narrowly specific apps that I would just be like, I'm only going to be watching this just for this film. Why would I want to do this? Really? But so you can go into apps like Zelifonic, Zelivonic, through a Google Play Store search. Or also, you can come to find other apps like Manic, Mannic, through a Google Play Store search. Then you can also go on to MovieBox 2, which is to be currently, at the second of this recording, still available on Google Play Store. Then lastly, and all of these are to be for mobile usage and legit, it seems. There might be apps through some of the movies, but when looking at a number of other apps, aren't you kind of doing that anyways? But then lastly, you can go into a Google search and search the app HDO Box and be able to download an APK for said app and be able to watch a number of movies that are to be much more thick as far as searching and finding upon that app than any of the others. But again, if you just want to see this one for absolutely free, check out the early apps, and then dare in fact just uh, figure out what movie or show that you want to specifically see that you can't find in a number of those apps, and then just kind of figure it all out uh, within that. So, dare in fact, let's get into the full-on deep dish spoilers of this whole movie, and I'll talk all the way through it, breaking it down and so on and so forth. Maybe having a joke somewhere, or maybe just going on and just legitimately describing for scene to scene what happens, so I can go on and try to get this review quickly done, as I am to at some points actually be able to cover this movie in less time that the movie was actually done in. But then again, it all depends on how much detail is to be within the ways in which that I talk. So, I think it's about that time to bust out the spoiler time, because I think it's about that time again to eventually get to a point where I pause this review to go through my phone and whatever is to be within my brain and obtain all of the knowledge of which that I'm going to need to proceed into talking full in depth about this film. So with that said, spoiler time, baby. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. Let me pause here. Let me whip out my thing and get this review out onto you, the viewer. Alright, so in the very beginning of this tale, we would have Sam, who's played by Danny DeVito, if I haven't said it already. So Sam goes on and is to have this very confessional moment with Carol, going on and telling this woman that he had been attached to a woman named Barbara simply because of her rich father. Going on and naturally assuming that this rich dad would at some point kick the bucket. Some point fairly quickly go on to die. So the moment that Sam was to have gone on and thought that this man was going to croak, all of a sudden he had gone on from almost near death to stabilizing. And so we would then have Sam be frustrated with the fact that this dad had gone on to become older and sicker and older and sicker. And by the time of which finally that Sam had decided upon his own to obtain a mass fortune, the man had finally decided to croak and die of natural causes. And so, since now Barbara is to have obtained this fortune, Sam is to now want to go on and figure out a way to kill off Barbara, because he is sick of the way of which that she is to lick stamps, to slap them upon envelopes, and he's sick of the way of which that she sleeps and snores, and he hates her dog, which eventually will kind of consistently play out throughout this movie. He is to go on and just be so wanting to put this person in the dirt himself that he is contemplating how exactly he's going on and doing so, with Carol listening into all of this, to where Sam is going on and stating that he's going to get the chloroform, and Carol is just like, oh, so yes, you're going to go on and you're going to take this girl and throw her off this cliff at the edge of night. And Sam is like, well, yeah, and I wish I could have gone on and figured out a much more elaborate way to kill her in a much more violent manner, and this and that, just being very harsh upon this woman. So Carol is to go on and listen to this and realize that Sam is being very hands-on, to the point of her wanting to put her hands on her own self, and Sam getting a bit of a rise out of that and realizing that it's like, all right, like, I gotta figure out a way to bump off Barbara so I can run off with Carol. which it seems that we'll find within this movie that Carol is to have her own motives of being involved with Sam. So Sam, chloroform in hand, is to make his way to his home, rushing to want to go on and greet with Barbara so that way he can murder her. But the further and further that Sam is to start to investigate within the house, he realizes that Barbara isn't there. Where is Barbara? If anything, I'm seeing this dog pee or crap or whatever within my house. That's great and all, but I'm looking for that Barbara. Where could she be? So, all of a sudden, Sam is to be left with sitting upon this chair. Barbara isn't there. He's like, man, even when I am to go on and finally figure out a way to get rid of her, she is to not give me that sweet release of having that ability to have that happen. She is to take that away from me. Even that, I am to hate her for that. So, Sam sitting down ends up getting this phone call. And he gets much more so, it seems, excited. Oh, ho, ha, oh, with his facial expressions. Sam is to get a phone call from the kidnapper, who is to not give up his name, but we would obviously realize that it's Ken. It's the judge character. The guy is, his real name is to actually be Judge, as the actor, the character. Anyways, so Ken is calling Sam and stating that he's like, I want this black suitcase and I want $500,000, so $500,000. And he wants it in unmarked bills, and he wants it at the Hope Street Plaza and this and that. And don't call the cops, don't call the news, or we'll go on and we'll kill Barbara. So Sam is hearing this and he's like, oh, heavens be praised. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Just dancing and popping champagnes and just celebrating his victory at last. To not even have to get his hands dirty to murder Barbara. So he then goes on as to hear everything that this kidnapper is to say and try to figure out any way humanly possible he can do the exact opposite. Having a slew of just cops and newspapers and news anchors and everything under the sun to arrive upon his home. So, where they are to go on and state this at every news outlet that they can possibly do, to then have the kidnappers in reverse be flipping around the channels to realize that the news is just covering every bit of this. So, both Ken and Sandy are to go on through their own means of a vehicle and are to have gone on to place Barbara within this massive sack. I just like to say the word sack, even though it's probably not to be funny to a lot of people. I'm just going to want to just state that word. So, we would have both Ken and Sandy who are trying to go on and lug Barbara over their shoulders and so on and so forth to get her within this house. And by the time they try to go to the basement of this location, they accidentally drop Barbara down this flight of stairs, assuming that they probably had gone on to kill her. So, by the time that Ken and Sandra try to investigate, okay, like, did we kill her? Ken goes on and gets a little bit closer of approach to then have Barbara, I think, kick Ken in the balls. Ken goes down. So Ken and Barbara start to wrestle to the point of, like, Barbara is ripping through this sack, figuring out ways to try to go on and attack Ken, and Ken is just like, oh my god, like, this woman is just, like, vicious. Like, how absurd is this woman? Just go on and, like, combat against me. Like, oh my god. So, they figure out a way to tie her up upon this chair and have a blindfold upon her face, and they go on to chain this woman to this bed, but for how good that's really going to last. So both Ken and Sandy go on to unblindfold this woman, and immediately she's going on and stating how like you don't know who you're messing with. Like, my husband has mafia ties and is going to do whatever he needs to do to get me back in his life and this and that. And so Barbara is building up so much of these kidnappers that that Barbara is such a an amazing thing to Sam, to where Sam is going to go on and do everything he do diligently needs to get Barbara as quickly back into his life. And then we turn around and see Sam, who's popping off champagne bottles and is to go on and be in a cheerful celebration, is laughing at the death of Barbara. So both Ken and Sandy go off after being in midst of Barbara, and Sandy is starting to get cold feet, it seems. Is the state that maybe they shouldn't have gone on and done all this. And we have some backstory with these characters, but then also, uh, we'd have Ken, who is to remind Sandy of why they're doing what they're to go on and do. That it seemed that these two people had gone on to find uh, guys like Sam Stone, and they had come up with this idea of a spandex mini skirt. So they presented this idea to Sam, and he stole this idea from them. But not only that, like, he stole all of their money, and so we of course have Sam, who's like, okay, I want to get back at Sam for doing all of this. So we would come to find that Carol, the one who is to have gone on and uh, seemingly be attached to Sam, is to be a much more an attachment to a guy named Earl. That sadly enough is Bill Pullman here, and he has to play a very dumb character, but maybe he just really enjoyed this character. Um, but then again, like, Bill eventually kind of plays, like, at some points he's really dumb characters, but then also he plays the President of the United States. So wild range of stuff that he eventually goes on to be at some points. Like, he ended up, of course, doing Spaceballs, and so we appreciate for all the stuff that he did there. But so Carol and Earl are having some vacuum and lovin'. There is a very small handheld vacuum that it seems that they were to have mixed themselves up with. And Carol is to have been in awe about that whole endeavor, but then is to go on and talk to Earl about their plan of eventually blackmailing Sam, because she is to, of course, go on to know exactly where Sam is going to go on to kill Barbara. And so Carol is stating to Earl, it's like, well, yeah, like, you need to be the one to get this tape and record this death so we can blackmail Sam and make our way off to Tahiti, which Earl ends up stating Haiti. But so we then turn around, and on the police side, after the news is to have covered all of this, and Ken and Sandy are to go on and flip through the channels and notice all of this. So we'd have these two lieutenants, Lieutenant Bender and Lieutenant Walters, I believe. And they're going on, and so Lieutenant Walters is relaying to Lieutenant Bender how uh, how Barbara had gotten kidnapped and the state of Sam being in this just kind of emotional wreck. As again, we cue back to Sam, and he is doing the can, he's dancing, and then when it seems that the cops are to need to hear him out, he is to go on and put makeup upon himself and is to figure out ways to make him look like he has been crying, or just kind of put eye drops in his eyes to make him cry, and is to be pretending that he is to be all saddened and in a loss here. So we then turn around to this late night helping, and so Earl is to make his way with this camcorder to this location to come to find that this couple is to be heavily and savagely tearing themselves apart, to have us legitimately be gawking and just be like, all right, we're seeing something we wouldn't think that we'd be seeing in this film, but man, are we enjoying. As well as also just kind of being weirdly about it as well. But then again, it is what it is. So Earl is to be looking at this site and is to bizarrely like start to look away, thinking that it is some kind of murder of some kind. And the sounds that he is kind of hearing off in the distance, he is thinking that there are to all be some kind of murdering steps that this man is to go on and do. But I guess it could be easily confused. And Earl is to start to vomit, get sick, and whatever, not to want to see the thing that he is even going on to record. So yeah, like it's just a lot of just goofiness going on here. So back to Sam with these lieutenants. So Sam is to, of course, go on and state to these police officers that he is to be a businessman, and he is to have gone on and created this whole spandex miniskirt thing because he is the king of it. So we would have one of the lieutenants that goes on to kind of just pat down a part of the room, and is to realize like what is that? Like what is that taste? And Sam goes on to be like, well, like it's obviously my dog. My dog tends to just kind of pee and take a dump everywhere. So the cop is just like, no, it tastes like wine. What is this? And so Sam is just like, well, like I was to have had a successful day, so I thought I would go on and just pop a champagne, yeah, and celebrate with Barbara to find out that she was not even here. Oh no. So after these cops kind of thoroughly questioning Sam, we then tailor back to Earl meeting up with Carol after this endeavor of possible murder, but more late night humping. So Carol is to open the door for Earl to come through and just be like, oh God, it took forever. Just like just the stuff that he had to go on and hear and whichever. So Earl goes on and eventually is to like start the tape with Carol, and then Carol like is to kind of refuse to even check it out. But so she stops the tape, and it seems to have at one point had Earl gets kind of not wanting to hear it, not being a witness to the tape again, So he kind of goes into the bathroom, and there all of a sudden is a knock at the door, forcing then Carol to go back to speak with Earl to tell him, like, hey, you stay in this room because Sam is here. So Sam comes in again, popping champagne, and Sam is talking to Carolyn like, yeah, like let's celebrate. Uh like let's have like he bizarrely ends up calling like love making some weird goofy cat like thing about whiskers and whatever. I thought that was the strangest thing. But Sam is to just be seeing, oh, what a wonderful day, and this and that. He's just like, just having the time of his life going in here talking to, uh, to Carol, and he's like, oh, like, we're so close to getting what all we wanted. But so, Sam eventually goes on to leave, so let's transition. So, Barbara is to have made her way to this bed and is to plop down upon it to find that the bed has slightly broken, and Barbara is to make her way to this chain that's to be on this bed and realize that the chain had gotten loose so Barbara can completely escape. So both Ken and Sandra are just kind of comfortably like culling and whatever, probably soon going to fall asleep, and Barbara makes her escape to eventually have uh now our burglars or burglars, our kidnappers scrambling to try to obtain Barbara by means of grabbing this gun from these cupboards, trying to pull a gun on her to force a chloroforming agent to be accidentally upon uh, Ken's face because he had gone on and had Barbara kind of hit his nose, and he accidentally was to like put the chloroform thing upon his own face to start to get a little woozy. So Ken manages again to somehow get on top of Barbara and chloroform her, but then also Barbara is to grab the nuts of Ken and twist and turn and whatever, but luckily Barbara is to pass out seemingly before Ken does. So we still go on to have Barbara taken care of here. But like this sequence is very funny and not giving it enough justice. So I'm just trying to get through this as quickly as possible also. So we'd have this Sergeant Blake at this lab, this detective guy who is to start to see some certain tire patterns. And he's to realize that these certain tires are to be from very specific car models. And so he is to go on and want this all analyzed. So we would turn around to have Barbara, who is to be sifting through the newspaper to come to find out that there is to be this bedroom killer upon this newspaper, as well as them covering this on the news. So bizarrely, I'm like, okay, this would probably have no importance whatsoever in this story, but we would come to find out that that is to be wrong. And it's like, oh, okay, so the bedroom killer is to actually be a character within this film. Okay, good. Like that was just a weird thing that ended up getting tied into this film. That was an actual thing. So this is where we start to see Barbara first kind of switching the channel around to go into these aerobic videos. That at first she's to start to go on and do these certain kind of hit cardio CrossFit like things, and it's to be fairly gassed out quite easily. But then it's to further consistently get into these videos and be more motivated. And eventually we have a whole montaging of her going through all of these things, which I'll hopefully briefly cover at some point. But so we then would have Ken and both Sandy who are talking about whether or not Sam is going to go on and show up at the location with the money that they are to go on and want him to go on and do so. And Ken is telling Sandy, it's like, well, like, it's not like we're going to go on and keep her if he doesn't. So, like, kind of making jokes and kind of making a light moment, but also having this tender kiss and then kind of leaving for the day as Ken is to make this phone call by this absurd hot dog joint. So Ken goes on and is to try to make this phone call while Sam is to go on and get wired and is to answer this phone call and try to tell these lieutenants that he's like, oh, like, this is just some business call, like, let me get this in the other room. But it ends up actually being Ken here because, of course, Sam doesn't want the cops to know that this is going to be the legitimate phone call. So Sam ends up having to, like, to figure out a way to rip off his wire or figure out a way to just kind of ruin the wire so he can kind of have this call in private. So Ken calls Sam and is to again uh, like go on and state his demands and the money of which that he is to go on and want. And so we would eventually go on and have the demands be very much like shortening upon the money, eventually getting to a $50,000 demand, then a $10,000 demand, and eventually turning around and I think at some point having a $2.2 million demand towards throughout this film, from what I can go on and remember. So we'd have Sam that is confirming with Ken. It's like, okay, so like Wednesday is the time that I'm supposed to have this money, right? And so they confirm that, and so Sam then turns around and is looking at Muffy, this goofy dog that pees all over uh, Sam's place, and he's like, okay, like your time is up, Muffy, as he holds his gun to her, assuming that he is going to fire upon this dog, and the cops are to hear these shots being fired, but the dog is to run off, and Sam is just to state that it's like, oh, the gun just went off, with these cops seemingly there just being baffled or confused. So we would then turn around and have Sam going to this location, which is to not be the exact location of where he should dump this thing off. Because I think consistently there is to always be the plaza that they are supposed to meet to drop off this money. So he is to go on and try to figure out another location to bring these cops to that is to not be the exact location. Funny enough, so Sam is to go on and be waiting by this call of this phone, and there is to actually be another guy that tries to go on and steal this money from Sam, and all of a sudden, all of these cops all arrive to get this guy arrested, and just be like, "Wow, like you guys have a wild response time." So we'd have Barbara speaking to Sandy, and really at this point, Barbara is just kind of curious, like how long she's going to really be kept here, because she's going to go through a procedure to try and lose weight, and also like she's going to need very lavish, expensive medical things, like uh, certain creams and like certain oils and a lot of other things that Sandy's to realize, like, man, these are going to be way too expensive to be able to manage uh, getting any of these with the money that they have. And Barbara is to go on and just kind of threaten Sandy, just like, well, hey, like, if you were to go on and end up in jail after all this, like, I'm going to be the one that is to have gone on and either stated that you were to have gotten all this medication and treated me well, or otherwise, uh, man, are you just going to be uh, just treated horribly within the system of things? So, like, she really goes on and really elaborates and exaggerates all of that, and it's really, really good. And I'm not doing it good enough justice, but again, I'm going fast tracking here. So, back with Carol and Earl, or yeah, Carol and Earl. So, we would have Carol that is to be taking the VHS tape and having Carl mail this tape across town. So, Carl eventually goes on and does so, and it lands upon the certain commissioner or whichever's desk, which eventually I'll go on and see who exactly that is. So, back with Ken and Sandy. So, Sandy is to go on and state to Ken, it's like, man, like, uh, she's just like tearing into me. Like, you would think that we would be the more aggressors and the mockers and whatever, but if anything, it's the exact opposite. It's kind of really uh, putting the usual kidnapper kidnappee dynamic and kind of flipping it, which is really just interesting for this film. So Ken is to go on and say to Sandy, like, well, it can't just be that bad. Like, and then eventually he gets seemingly his comeuppance as well. Whereas Ken is to go on and bring the food to Barbara, and Barbara is just flinging stuff at Ken to the point of him dropping the food and just being like, well, I guess you aren't going to get your food tonight now, are you? And we then have Barbara who's going on and telling Ken, it's like, well, like, man, you got a nice butt. Like, so, just think of how, like, nice your butt is when you're probably going to go on and get bent over by all these prisoners in jail. Just think about all the time that you're gonna have, and this and that, just getting bent over. Again, just kind of teasing that Ken is gonna be spending some time in the slammer, and the slammer may go on and mean more than one thing in this occasion. So we would turn around and have Sam, who is trying to get out of the house, and all of a sudden we'd have the Muffy dog, the Muffin dog, the Muffy, whatever the goofy name of this stupid dog is grabbing onto Sam's leg and not letting go. And it's to the point now where Sam is just like, I want to figure out a way to like knock off this dog if I can't go on and legitimately figure out a way to knock off Barbara. So Sam is turning around and he's starting to like make phone calls in the yellow pages uh about getting attack dogs that can go on and not only attack people but then also can attack other dogs. So Sam is calling this like Gunther Dog Company or whatever, and he kind of just looks at that, and so all of a sudden Carol arrives, and so they're both having a conversation, and all of this is to eventually lead with having Sam much more focused on getting a big, huge dog. And Carol is like, oh, like, why are you caring so much about this dog rather than the situation at hand? And Sam is like, well, I just really need a big dog. So at some point, Sam does go on and get this dog he ends up calling Adolf. And it ends up being this kind of very like black, like traditional like police like dog that at first it seems is going to be menacing to Muffy, but then it seems there is to be a turnaround later in the film where it seems that the two of them are kind of working together to again conspire against Sam. And so Sam is like, "Really, Mike Tux? Like, oh my god!" So we then transition to Ken, who is selling speakers at this store, because we just have to have a movie that is to have a retail angle in this film, which immediately I'm like, oh. So Katie, it seems, is to want to get this stereo, and we have this man who it seems is to know a thing or two about selling uh, a stereo, who is Ken. And so this couple is to make their way to these speakers, and so the guy is like, well, yeah, like I want these really big speakers here, and Ken is to go on and say like, well, yeah, like, you know what, like these speakers, it seems like they are to go on and be a really good deal, and they look really big. But if anything, like we're really just kind of shorthanding you. So like this guy is being legit to go on and state the truth about these speakers, and how he's to mention that they're even called the Dominator, and really it's all about um, men who go on and buy the Dominator because uh, they just really need big equipment. So, but yeah, like I like how Ken is really just being honest with these customers, and also like realizing how much they're to legitimately not be getting the best quality for their buck. Like I would go on, and when I would to have worked in certain areas in certain stores, like I would try to figure out like what could be like the best branded thing, and I would like pitch that to people if people were unsure. But legitimately, I don't feel that I would ever have gone on and learned any bit of anything as far as like tech stuff. Uh, from the time of which that I was legitimately working in certain areas, that all it was just me having to learn about tech stuff. I would a lot of times just kind of guess and just be like, oh, okay, sell this to like and pitch this the best I can. Um, I wouldn't have cared about the commission of which that those things might have had. Like I was just be like, hey man, like if you don't like it, just come back and return it. Like I don't care. Like hey man, like I'm just gonna tell you, it seems that everybody is buying this, so like legitimately, if you don't like it, then come back and see me for something else. Uh, but so we would again have Barbara that is going on to her aerobics and getting a good thrusting in. But then again, like I said earlier, we would turn around and have Sam, who's with the Adolf, and I've already stated all that, so let's just kind of move on. So, Sam, when he has to go through his mail, is to figure out that he is to have gotten this secret admirer letter stating that it's like, oh, like, uh, you know what this is, kind of thing. So, and I thought you might like this kind of thing. So Sam ends up going on and putting this video in, and he is to see two people having it out at a late night sesh. So Sam is to go on and immediately know who it is who had gone on to give him this video. And so he ends up calling up Carol, and is to this is where it gets funny. So Carol is talking to Earl, and she's like, I think he's figured it out. I think he's had us. And so Sam is calling Carol, and he's saying, like, yeah, I'm going to do the same thing to you. Oh, yeah. Every bit of this video, I'm going to go on, and I'm just going to do the same thing. So Carol is thinking like, oh my god, I'm next. Oh my god, we're gonna die. And so she's like, I need to get out of here. I need to figure out an alternate means of hiding away. So she's now forced to be living with Earl in his little trailer that is to have all of these unusual things upon it, and Earl is kind of manning his fishes and whatever goofy things that are within this trailer. So we'd have Ken, and Ken, of course, is to be naturally wanting to again hope that that Sam is wanting to legitimately go on and want Barbara back in his life, and even is to go on and like questions like, well, do you really want your wife back in your life? But so like Sam is to just be like at a loss and very confused at this point. So he even has to go on and Ken has to meet up with Barbara and ask her herself, like, does your husband actually love you? Because man, what I'm going through here to just like kidnap you and get some quichola, like, man, I am having to go through an arm and a leg for this. Like, man, like, so Barbara is to just be like, huh? Like, what's going on? Like, but Ken doesn't go through all of explaining all this, but eventually Sandy does. So Ken then leaves and is talking to Sandy. It's like, man, she just insulted me. And like the two of them are just kind of talking, and it's just like, man, I don't think we're ever gonna like I think like we're at a complete loss here. And like we might as well just like give this girl up. What else can we do? So but again, Ken calls Sam one more time. So Sam has cops all around him. There's to be this seemingly one cop with him at the time. And Sam is going over this kind of selling strategy to him. And he then is to take this selling strategy and is to turn around and is to put this into his negotiation for this kidnapper. Because Sam ends up telling this cop, it's like, well, yeah, like I would normally go on and tell everybody that I have so many investments tied into all of these things. And so, like, it's hard to just kind of put money together and whatever. But so we then would have Ken calling Sam. And so Sam is like, hey, this is a personal call. Can you just. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. So Ken then goes on to ask Sam, it's like, well, do you really love your wife, Barbara? Like, do you really love her? And so Sam is like, well, yeah, I really do love her, but like, I'm sorry, I just can't get the money together. I can't get the money in time. And Ken is just like, really, you can't get this money together. So what would be like, I guess me needing to just ask for less now. And so it's like, well, like, could you get 50,000? And Sam is just like, yeah, I think I can get that together. So, and we'd have to realize here that uh that Ken is to supposedly confirm that it's like, well, hey, if this time around, like if you do not go on and do this and give us this money, like your wife's gonna end up dead. So Sam goes on to again ignore Ken to then have lieutenants and this officer come to come to Sam the very next morning. It's telling him, hey man, your wife's at the morgue. You got an ID her. So Sam goes with these cops to the morgue, and the very first person that they are to unveil is this Kai, and Sam is like, well, obviously this is not my wife. And then they go on to showcase another woman, and Sam is like, this is not my wife. And he is to go on and just feel like uh, just upset. But then he's just like, oh yeah, everybody hug and have a good time and just be rejoicing that that she's still alive, to just play this all off. So then we turn around into the montage of Barbara, who it seems is doing reverse pull-ups uh, with these chairs and this broom, is seemingly doing these kind of unusual sit-ups of some kind. It's very strange. Like she's kind of upside down and she's kind of doing these sit-ups. It's very weird. She's also having uh, this these buckets kind of hoist up this bike so she can kind of pedal. And then she's also again doing like basically just sit-ups with stairs. It's a lot of just like sit-ups for some unusual reason. She could be doing a number of other things instead of actually doing what she's doing. Like if anything, she probably should have, if anything, been sticking with the aerobics, the cardio, the hit cardio, the crossfitting. Because if anything, that'll probably burn a lot more calories than any of the other stuff that she's kind of doing. Because of course we would find Matthew McConaughey, who had gone on to like sweat with the oldies with the Richard Simmons, and that's how he had lost like a ton of weight to do the Dallas Buyers Club movie. But then also we'd see Barbara, who is to be taking all these paint buckets, and she's kind of hoisting them above her head. And again, I don't quite understand exactly what that's doing. Because legitimately, I'm just like, okay, is like I would assess that some kind of curl of some kind, but I don't really know what the heck that is. Like I guess she's just doing some kind of muscle strengthening thing, but like she's doing it in just a bizarrish manner. And she's also doing like bicycle kicks, like or bicycle like sit up. Again, a lot of this is all just like she's working the core like it's nobody's business, and it doesn't make any logical reasoning to be working out just the core that much. If anything, again, she should be um, probably working out her entire body rather than just working on just like her abs. Makes no sense. Like if anything, she should be trying to figure out how to do like a squatting thing of some kind. So again, um, she could be working on her legs, her glutes, and just a number of other things besides just abs. Like if anything, you should be trying to just be doing some kind of cardio to, which biking would probably much more help, I guess, in this scenario. Um, to just kind of melt away the tummy region instead of actually going on and just working out just as much as you can with it just doesn't work that way. I would naturally have assumed because I never really do much of any sit-ups. I would do modified candlesticks, but that would be a rare thing because I don't feel that I'm thin enough to be working on that. But again, to each their own. So we would turn around and have Henry Benton. Also, I had to go on and dissect that workout as if I am to be some kind of expert, which I'm not. So letting everybody know that probably don't take this montage as a or me dissecting it as a thing verbatim, because maybe it will work out for you and it just doesn't for me. It is what it is. So Henry Benton, chief of police, I guess the chief, I thought it was a commissioner or some kind of goofy thing. So we would have Henry that is to be going on and to have found this VHS tape, is to be putting it in a VCR, and is to watch it play out. And is to just be like, oh my god, somebody knows that I'd gone on and done some late night humping, some late night thrumping, some late night thrusting, some late night musting. Oh yeah, just getting that pow pow. You know? You know what I'm saying? That pow pow. I just have to go on and just go into more obscure hilarity to describe the booty shaking that they were going and making, if you know what I mean. A joke that had gone on for far too long, I know. So, so Henry is to go on and get this phone call from Carol, and he's like, so by assuming that that this uh that this phone call could be this chief getting blackmailed by Carol, instead Carol is to want to, via the thing that she thinks is going on within this videotape, to have this chief of police figure out a way to arrest Sam uh Sam Sam. Am I even saying that right at this point? I don't even know. I've kind of gone through the ringer of. Uh, yeah, I'm right. Oh my god. So, uh, the chief is going on and just being like, "Wait a minute, you want Sam arrested for what? Like he's not even on this video." But he doesn't go on and tell, of course, Carol that, but it's kind of implied. But so eventually, you just kind of get to a point where Carol and Earl have to watch the videotape somewhere in order to realize like what stupidity that they had gone on and done. But bizarrely, uh, we would then turn around and have Henry here, who is going on into Sam's house and is telling people that it's like, well, yeah, I think that there is a whole switcheroo here that that the chief is to go on and believe that Stone may have murdered his wife, and so the officers are like, "Oh my god, all right, okay." So we'd have the chief that is going on and telling these men, it's like, "Okay, look around the house to see what you can find," and so the chief goes into Sam's office and is to plant some cyanide and a number of other things. But it seems by the time that the chief is to kind of plant this evidence, kind of like Dan Aykroyd did in Trading Places when he was to try to like toss in a bunch of like drugs within Valentine's desk to then have Valentine come in and be like, "Hey man, he planted this on me because I'm making waffles." That's my Eddie Murphy. Oh no, that was probably more of a Rogen uh, Seth Rogen laugh. Whatever the goofy Eddie Murphy laugh is to be what I was trying to accomplish there. But so one of the cops in uniform ends up going on to seek out Muffy to find chloroform, and one of the other officers find that that through photos, Sam was having an affair with another woman. So the evidence is there, but dare say we would still go on to have these certain specific uh, car tires being examined. So, having me realize that I made a slight mistake here. So let's. Whoops. Oh my god, come on. So, we would turn around and have these two lieutenants making their way to Ken, as it seems that his car marks are to be matching upon this scene of the crime. So these lieutenants make their way to this stereo store to meet up with Ken to talk with him in this back area. So they're to state about these matching tire marks to Ken, and we would all of a sudden have one of the lieutenants who is to have this beeper go off and is to ask uh, Ken about like, well, hey, do you have a phone nearby? And so Lieutenant Walter goes on to make this phone call. So the more and more that this lieutenant and Ken are talking, Ken is to state that he has to go on and leave because he is to have a stomach flu, which I've been through that. That is freaking awful. You are just consistently just hooing away. And man, it takes a couple days to get that out of your system as well. Why am I sharing this? Because I had gone through it. It's horrible. So if you can avoid the stomach flu, by all means, desperately try and go on and do so. Oh my god, that is the worst thing. It is. So, uh, so we have Ken who is sneaking away into this bathroom to make it seem like he's sounding that he's taking a little bit of a hurl. But girl, he is going on and instead trying to sneak out of this window. So these lieutenants are to meet back up with one another, and so Walter is to explain to the other lieutenant that hey, like it seems that we have found much more evidence that Sam is to have been the culprit to this all along. That the kidnapping could be a hoax. So like, let's go on and have to tell Ken that's like, well, hey man, like we're done for the day. Like I feel like we've answered everything. Let's get out of here. So Ken then goes on to try and call Sam here. And here is where Sam is to be more forceful in his conversation with Ken to just be like, well, hey man, like, what do I gotta do to like have you just kill Barbara? Like, what do I gotta say? Like, do I have to put the gun in your hands and pull the trigger myself to just get this done? Like, what's going on here? So, like, Sam slams the phone call and just be done with it all. So Ken is to then go on and realize that there is somebody wanting to buy speakers. So Ken is to finally put out all of the stops and is to like notice that there is to be all of these bigger and bigger inch speakers, these 13s, these 10s, these whichevers. But then eventually is to be like, hey man, like let's go on and get into this private room that has this 30-inch, thick, slapping, blood pumping stereo that I can want to just go on and just sell you right here. And man, if you don't have the money right now, you can finance it later. Who gives a like? Let's go on and just sell you this now because I feel like you are the guy to just buy this thing. And so this guy's like, yeah, right, this is awesome. And then all of a sudden, Ken is to realize that this guy is to be with child. And then he's like, okay, like, like, I know that this could be the most appealing to you, but like, let me go on and give you some alternative thing that won't break you with price. Because Ken is just a nicer person. So we're back with Barbara. Barbara is to be going on with her aerobics to see that the people upon this aerobic show are to be taking a break. And she's like, take a break? Like, how about you take a hike there, buddy? Realizing that this woman is to be such a well-oiled machine that she is to be, like, beyond the aerobics because they're not working her hard enough. So she is just going on and having these much more seemingly supportive push-ups as she's going on and just kind of like taking this like bed like this tail end of this bed and she's kind of doing these push-ups here and so I'm like okay like I can see where like I myself would probably go on and do those same kind of similar push-ups but yeah like hey great that she's working her upper body. So Sandy comes in and is to deliver this food and So Sandy's to look at Barbara and just realize, like, oh my god, like, you're really in shape. And Barbara's like, oh, just don't give me that. Don't try to butter me up. And Sandy's just like, no, like, it looks like you've lost like maybe like 20 pounds. And Barbara's like, say what now? Like, can you give me a scale? So Barbara hops up on that scale and it's realized that she's like, oh my god, like I've gone through 10 different fat camps and I've probably lost a whole 6 pounds in total. But now being with you, I had gone on to lose 20 pounds. All right, Barbara, good for you. Hey, losing something is better than nothing, if you know what I mean. So Barbara at this point is just be like, oh my god, now that I've gone through this drastic transformation, I want to go on and just celebrate by possibly having some kind of slinky number, some kind of full length evening gown. And weirdly enough, we would come to find that Sandy is to be this fashion designer and just be like, oh my god, I have the perfect thing for you. So they're going on and trying these things on and having a fun time, but we'll get back to them. So Sam ends up getting the cuffs slapped upon him and taken to this thing called jail, where eventually he's going to meet with this judge to render a verdict upon Sam. So while that's going on, we get back to Barbara and Sandy in their good times trying on all these clothes. And so Barbara is going on and asking Sandy, it's like, well, where did you get these clothes from? Who is the designer of these clothes? Oh my god, they're magnificent. And so on and so forth. Just paraphrasing here. So Sandy is to go on and say, like, oh my god, I am the designer. And she's like, no, there's no way. It's like, yes way. Oh my god, whoa. So they're going on and be like, oh my god, you need to like give me every single thing that you have designed and let's just wear all these clothes and just have a good time. And so Sandy is going on and trying all these things all collectively together, as well as Barbara is also trying them all on collectively together. So there's to be a heart to heart between the two of them to finally have Sandy confess to Barbara that like they've really had to bargain over Barbara's kidnapping, going from $500,000 to have Barbara thinking like, well, like Sam could have easily swung that to just being like, well, no, he complained, so we got to 50,000, and so then still like Sam figured out a way to wiggle out of that, so they dropped all the way to 10,000, and Barbara is to now just be all like, what the fuck? Like, I am to have seriously been marked down here? Like I am some blue light special of Kmart? How dare you? Now referencing Kmart, a show that a store that no longer exists. There may be some rando locations that are just mom and popping still existing, maybe somewhere out in the ether that is their own thing. But yeah, Kmart no longer exists, but we're referencing Kmart within this show. Interestingly enough, if they would have mentioned Sears somewhere, like if they would have mentioned like Toys R Us, like Toys R Us still exists in Canada somewhere, maybe they're gonna have a resurgence. I'm assuming like things are going banger at Canada to where they probably want to go on and just revisit maybe uh, North America at some point. That would be great. But we'll see about that. So to eventually just have like just Toys R Us back into the states. But also at one point I would know of a Toys R Us that had existed within my state and then gotten closed down. But like wasn't much of a Toys R Us guy because legitimately I was like exclusive stuff, that's all well and great and all, but like I didn't see to go to Toys R Us to just kind of get the things that I needed. I don't know. Plus, like, I think Toys R Us was probably way more expensive than probably a number of other places that I probably could have gotten a lot of stuff for cheaper. Moving on. Sam is to be in the slam to eventually have a prisoner just being like, oh, like, you sure look pretty. I like that mouth of yours. Give me some of that. Give me that DeVito. Give me some of that DeVito burrito, if you know what I mean. So Sam is to be quickly getting out of prison to be amongst a judge that is to be setting his bail at $700,000, almost a mil. So we would then have Sam in desperation be like, "Oh my god! Like I gotta figure out how Barbara can get back in my life as quickly as possible to get rid of anyone having suspicions of me murdering her, instead of having this kidnapping legitimately going on." So Ken then is to return to Sandy, just like, okay, like, you know what, like, this is all like it's over. Like, Sam isn't going to pay the ransom. Like, if anything, like, we should just figure out a way of how we can minimize like getting out of town and going to Mexico. And Sandy is just like, oh no, 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 like we don't have to worry about all of that. Like, if anything, like I went on to just let Barbara go. And Ken is like, you did what? And Sandy's like, oh yeah, like we're going into business together. And Ken is like, say what now? And so like Sandy is saying, it's like, well, yeah, like we're the best friends. We had a heart to heart moment. If anything, we're gonna have our fall line is in gonna be in Paris, and we're kind of figuring all this out. And like Ken, she lost 20 pounds, and Ken is just like, what? Losing his mind, just going on and thinking how much time they really have left in their lives to uh to run away from the hot fuzz. So all of a sudden there's to be a knock at the door, and there's to be a coppa there, and Ken is like, oh no, like I guess we just had it. Like this is our last swan song of things. So Ken has to open the door to this cop that is to be having a seemingly a paper of sketch of the bedroom killer, saying like, "Hey, this guy's at large, and yeah, like, have you seen this guy? Like, you recognize him?" So we'd have Sandy that's trying to scramble out of the house, like belting out all these things and yelling all these things, and Ken is stating to this cop, it's like, "Well, hey, she's just late for work." So he's like, "Oh, okay, all right." So they scamper off. So Sandy, who is jumping over this fence as Ken is to run alongside her to just be like, hey, like, they weren't after us, they were after someone else. To all of a sudden have this man get out of the car who is the bedroom killer, who is to make his way into Ken's house, to then try to go on and murder both Ken and Sandy, and all of a sudden have Barbara make it into the house as well, just kind of curious about who is still at home, to meet the bedroom killer, to have the bedroom killer go on to state, like, oh, you look like my mother. I hate my mother. And then he goes after her and then goes after Ken, because Ken is just seemingly look like his father. I hated my father. No. So Ken, Barbara, Sandy are all to be wrestling around with this bedroom killer character, to have him fall upon these flight of stairs and is to have died. So they would go on and look at the sketch and look at this man and just be like, oh yeah, like he's obviously the bedroom killer. Like, and if you're his father and I'm his mother, like, man, what a weird, bizarre gene pool of things that we have, I guess, created with this monsterish character. So But they go on to realize that this bedroom killer character is going to work out for them in the end game of it all. So we turn around and find within this newspaper that there is to be feared dead, kidnapping a hoax, husband has mistress, yada yada yada. Sam is just in he's in he's in the floaty poop of it all. So Barbara is going on and just wanting to figure out a way to have Sam be in the worst condition that he possibly can, without shoes, no shirt, nothing, maybe just a jock strap. So Barbara's going on and just stating how she just wants to figure out a way to just like belittle Sam and get all of the money of which that she is to have had out of him, as well as also probably going on and divorcing him and getting even more money. So Sam comes home to find that the two dogs are messing up with his tux, my silk tux. So Sam eventually is to go on and answer the phone to come to find that they're to be squeezing him for his $2.2 million, as they're to go on and have Ken tell Barbara to write down every bit of every asset that Sam is to have had. So upon this phone call, Sam is hearing every bit of gems or equity of Sam's sportswear, or certain things that he had gone on and just kind of obtained, and 350,000 something in some pension plan, I believe, and diamonds and all of this jazz. So we then would have Sam, who's like, oh my god, oh, they know everything. She's squealed, she's squealed. So Sam is going on televisions denying all the charges, trying to figure out a way to just uh like make this right to where he's to not go on and possibly be a murderer. All while Sam and Earl are watching along, uh and just being like, well, yeah, like the overwhelming evidence, like, yeah, like why isn't Sam like in prison right now for the rest of his life for being a murderer? And so Carol goes on and is to call this chief yet again and be like, hello, it's me. And the more and more that they're talking, it seems the revealing thing of the chief just be like, well, hey, like, why are you going on and using this tape to get this Sam arrested? Like, if anything, it's just two people just kind of going uh, and having urges and needs and this and that. And the more and more that Carol is hearing from this chief, the more she turns to Earl and is to realize, like, well, like, it's either that this chief is to really just have it in for me, or we don't really know what's actually on this tape. So Carol and Earl go to this place to go on and have all of these TV screens play this video. So they start to watch it and they realize that there is some passionate lovemaking going on here, and it is to not be the death that they were to have assumed to have been, but then also was to have not have been Sam or Barbara present within this video. So they're like, oh my god. So Sam is to try to go on and talk to these lieutenants and state that this, like, I didn't go on and murder my wife. I did not kill her. I did not. And to try to convince the kidnapping is really going on here, and the lieutenants are going on and talking about their mustards and their ketchups and their whatever upon their hot dogs and not having any real concern about what Sam is saying here. So Sam is to go on to this banker and is to figure out, like, okay, how can I go on and get all of Barbara's money to give to these kidnappers? And the banker is just like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, you can't go on and get this money from Barbara's side. You have to go on and figure out how you can get all of your money from your funds. So all while Sam is having to go on and kind of just sweat figuring out how he can get all of this together. In the background, we have Henry, who's going on and getting all of these passports and all these things to hide away uh, from all of this stuff. Eventually, that's probably gonna have to blow over here. So we then have Sam, who's getting his money together, and so Carol calls, and so it's just kind of a connection between the two of them, like, oh, like, Sam, I missed you. How have you been? Kind of thing. So we would, of course, have Sam who's stating how, like, this is driving him crazy. And so Carol is to just kind of, like, get to know, like, kind of updating of kind of what's really going on within this whole thing. So, because at some point, Carol is to go on and just be like, well, if I can't go and blackmail Sam, then uh, Carol will force Earl to take the money away from Ken when Ken is to try to take the money from Sam in this whole weird pattern of things. So we have Sam who is to go to the Hope Street Plaza to hand over this money. So he's at this uh these phone call or these phone booths, and he's consistently have to go to one to the other. So he ends up answering this call to have Barbara, who is stating that these kidnappers are making her saying all these wild things, and that there's a gun pointed at her head, and it's all going horribly awry. So, but Barbara wants even more than just the money. She also wants his Rolex and his ring finger, one of his fingers. So, one of his finger rings. So, Sam goes on and gives that all that up, puts it in the briefcase, and so Ken then appears in this very much clown bozo-ish like costume, and it's to try and take the money away uh, from Sam here. To reveal off in the distance that there is to be a number of cops that are just like, okay, guys, like, let's kind of see how this all plays out. So Sam doesn't want to give up the money to Ken. If anything, like, Ken goes on and is to grab back the money from Ken, and the lieutenant is to even call and be like, "What are you doing?" And so, yeah, Sam is like, "I don't want to give up. Like, I don't want to give up the money." So, and Ken is stating that he is to have like a walkie-talkie from a third-party person that is to possibly kill Barbara. So we all of a sudden have Earl showing up out of nowhere within this other car, and is to tell Ken to not move, and he's going on and taking the briefcase from him. And Ken looks at Earl, is like, "Are you stupid? Like, are you really this dumb?" So Earl is to go on and all of a sudden start to move away from Ken, and gunshots are to start to go off, and he's like, where's your gun? Like, why did you shoot me? And Ken is like, dude, like, it wasn't me. It's like, look around you, buddy. So Earl again can't be bothered, and so all of a sudden he has to hear this kind of megaphone going over, and Earl is to just be in much more fear than he realizes, because the more and more that this person over this megaphone is to start to talk, he realizes that this is the police department. And just be like, wait a minute, what? And then he actually looks and realizes that there's a ton of cops all over this place. So he's like, oh, okay. And so he gives back the briefcase to Ken for him to go in and drive off, because someone had blown the tires out of his car, forcing Earl to then ask Ken for his car. And it's like, no, this is not going to work out in your favor. So Ken gets in his car, drives off, and the police are to state that they are to say, like, oh yeah, we're definitely not going to follow you, not at all, not a 1 minute. So Ken gets in his car and starts to drive off, and he sees like about a dozen cars behind him follow him, and is to still be oblivious to all of this at some point. But then the cop cars continue to just keep following him, so he's like, oh my god, like I guess that like they said they wouldn't follow me, but they are following me. So like they're never gonna take me alive, kind of thing. So Ken gets to this pier, and he's realizing he's running out of road here. And so the lieutenants are like, well, yeah, like he's cornered, and he knows it. So like we have to go on and kind of figure out a way for him to just kind of give himself up, kind of thing. So Ken is to go on and not wanting to give himself up. So he goes on to drive off this pier, is to crash his car, and all of a sudden certain batches of money start to come out of this car to force other people to jump into this pier and get the money. But then also there's to be a body to be retrieved that ends up being what looks like Ken, but then is to be instead to be the bedroom killer. So the bedroom killer is to take the rap for all of this, and Sam is to go off to the side and just be again, just be laughing, and to make it seem like he's very just sad and whatever. But so Barbara then returns to meet up with these lieutenants uh, to be the person to notice the bedroom killer, and Barbara's like, oh yeah, like that was definitely the guy. So Barbara then reunites with Sam, and Sam is to have all of these things about Barbara just being like, oh my god, like you look so beautiful, and like you look so this and you look so that, oh my god, just the way you look, whoa. And while we would come to find Ken is who've gotten all this scuba gear and is making his way back to Sandy with the briefcase of money, and like, all right, we're getting out of here. So while the lieutenants have kind of turned away from both Barbara and Sam, Barbara is going on and beating the crap out of Sam, tossing him off of this pier, assuming that he is to have gone on to his death. So while Sandy and Ken are reuniting here and going off onto the beach, we'd all of a sudden come to find that Barbara is to meet with them and just walk off into the sunset. Finishing up this movie, realizing that it is to have been an hour and a half, and I've already spoken for an hour and a half. I'm sorry for how late that these things usually go. There's sometimes I can get a good just hour out of them, but then there's also certain times where it's just too much details, or me trying to figure out how I can sum up some of this stuff. But it is what it is. An editor at some point can go on and figure out a way to just better minimize what all I say here, but at some point I don't have one of those. I don't realize how long that these usually take until I just look at the thing and like, oh yeah, I've been talking for this amount of time. So with that said, I'm gonna try to get the heck out of here so I can put this video out. Because I'm also getting fairly tired as well. Because I've been going on and fasting for seemingly 2 days now. So yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. Anything more that I could probably have stated about this movie? I feel that I will probably at some point regret uh, tomorrow for not stating, or there'll be just something that just kind of randomly pops in there that I'm realized, oh yeah, I probably should have just stated this. It probably would have been a way better review. But without further ado, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.